Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's make a start. We've got a fairly lengthy agenda today, so let's try and at least start on time. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Gordon Johnston. I'm the chair of the IJB, so be gentle with me as it's my first meeting. Do have one or two announcements, but we'll do this formal business first. We do have a few apologies from Ian Dixon, Francis Dodd, and Elaine Beveridge, but we do have Sharon Wally here as substitute. Are there any other apologies?
Chair, we also have apologies from Kenneth Laurie and Ross McGuffey.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any declarations of interest in relation to any items on today's agenda? No. Not seeing anything. Can we move then to the minute of the last meeting, which was held on 21st of March? I'm just going to take it for accuracy. Does anyone have any issues or suggested amendments with the accuracy of the minute? Can we take that as being an accurate record then?
Agreed.
Thank you. And the action log, there are a number of actions, most of which either in train or completed. Is there anything to raise, Gail?
So item IJB 10, we've got a report on the agenda today. Item IJB 55, that will be included as part of our 26-27 budget process. IJB 69 is on the agenda today. Items IJB 213, the intermediate care facility, that's part of our budget delivery for this year in terms of not to deliver the facility, but to do the bed-based review, which will determine what's required. So that item is proposed to be closed. And IJB 22, around the budget savings and budget proposals for this financial year, that was agreed in March, IJB. So that item is proposed to be closed as well.
Okay, thanks, Gail. All seems fairly straightforward. Any questions or issues? No. Seeing anything. Okay, just before we move on to the agenda, there were two things I did want to raise. First thing is, I said this is my first meeting as chair. I just want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Councillor Fiona Colley. Fiona was chair of the IJB for the last 2 years, and I think even before that, going further back. I think we're in a pretty good place in the IJB. We've moved a lot of things forward, and a lot of that is due to Fiona's leadership and wise counsel as chair. And I'm very glad that she is going to be staying on as my vice chair, so I will have the benefit of that support over my term as chair. So thank you so much, Fiona. Look forward to continuing to work with you. The other thing I wanted to say is that this is Margot's last meeting as service user rep on the IJB. Margot has been a member of the IJB for a very long time, certainly before I was around 5 years ago, and has always been such a strong advocate for the people of Falkirk and making sure that everything we do is rooted in concern for the people that we serve. So Margot, just a little token of our thanks for all of your hard work over so many years. Thank you so
much. Thank you. It has been a privilege to serve on the IJB as a service user representative. And I just want to thank you all for the support that I've been given in this role, and to wish anyone who's taking on the role every success, and to reassure them of how much support they will receive. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Margot. Okay, back to the agenda. Item 5 then is the Chief Officer's report. Over to you, Gail.
Thanks very much, Chair. So this report is the usual Chief Officer's report, in which we highlight key issues locally, regionally and nationally we think will be of interest to IJB members. So I'm just going to highlight a few of these items which are set out in the report in front of you today. So the work around implementing our leadership structure continues to progress. It is moving on well. We have our revised management governance structure, which is now in place. That includes the Financial Oversight Board and a Strategic Planning and Transformation Board. So those boards, along with our Clinical and Care Governance Management Group, will help us from a management perspective, have that oversight and assurance and support the driving forward of our priorities as set out in our strategic plan and in our budget as well. The Children's Services integration has been progressing. So operationally, staff in Children's and Justice Social Work Services came across to the partnership from the 1st of April. That transition seems to have happened quite smoothly so far. We're continuing to engage regularly, welcome colleagues into the partnership as part of our broader partnership and support that transition. It links to the integration scheme. So the integration scheme, as approved by Falkirk Council, NHS, Forth Valley, and endorsed by the IJB in January, was submitted to Scottish Government. We did receive some initial comments in May, which we're working through, and then we will respond. So we'll continue to progress that jointly with colleagues from Scottish Government, and we'll provide an update as that progresses. Once subject to the integration scheme being approved by Scottish ministers, one of the key changes will be that Children's and Justice Social Work Services will become delegated to the IJB, and the governance and decision making will sit with the IJB. Until that time, the governance continues to sit with Falkirk Council. In terms of the personal carer job evaluation, this has now been finalised, and the evaluation concluded that the personal carers should be regraded, and it's been communicated to all affected, and arrangements have been made for the implementation of that. The work around the care at home redesign will recommence shortly on the commencement of the new care at home lead. Work is ongoing around our strategic commissioning plan and future operating model. As colleagues are aware, our current strategic plan is in place until 2026. In relation to the legislative requirements and the guidance, we're required to review the current plan to determine whether or not we need to undertake a process to develop a new strategic plan. So that review is taking place over the summer with a view to a recommendation coming to IJB in September 2025. The recommendation in that report will set out the next steps. Work has been ongoing around developing a protocol for externally commissioned care homes and care at home to ensure that we've got a consistent approach to responding to concern around externally commissioned services. So the protocol was approved by the senior leadership team last month. In terms of housing with care, following the IJB decision in March that care in one of our housing with care complexes would be reprovisioned to an external care provider, an options appraisal was carried out during April this year. The options appraisal process was a really robust process and involved trade union representatives, HR, housing and officers from within the service. So it has a preferred option has been identified, which is Tiggotts Hall. And communications have gone out to a range of stakeholders this week. There was some information, erroneous information that was in the media prior to the formal communications going out. Hence, the communication went out a wee bit earlier than was planned. So we've communicated to the staff that are affected. They're being supported through the various processes to support them in terms of either options available through redeployment or other options. Communications have gone to the service users who will be affected, and I think it's really important to state that service users will continue to receive the care that they're assessed as needing, but the provision of it will be by a different provider. In addition, communications have gone out to IJB members and elected members in Falkirk Council, and we've also responded to media inquiries. So hopefully colleagues have seen those communications. In terms of a test of change inspection for care at home services, so there's a new test of change that, for inspection which is underway, and Falkirk has been identified as a preferred location for that test of change to be implemented. So that inspection, integrated inspection, is ongoing at the moment. It's a fairly long process. It commenced on the 21st of April and it runs for a few months. So we'll give a further update as further information becomes available in that. And I also wanted to mention we continue to be inspected by regulatory bodies, and I wanted to highlight the recent inspection at Summerford House. It was inspected in April, and in terms of the questions that were considered, it was graded as a very good and a good, which is excellent for the staff and the workers who have continued to put in efforts to continue to improve the services. There was one area for improvement which is being progressed, and the report highlighted the Summerford's strong emphasis on reablement, mobilisation and resident independence. And finally, I wanted to highlight the MAT standards. So the ADP has reported and submitted evidence in relation to the MAT standards implementation. This has been scored and we've received a green rating across all MAT standards. So I think that the diagram that's within the report shows the improvement that has taken place over the last few years. So well done to all the staff that's been involved in that.
Thanks, Gail. Some good news in there, some long-standing items moving forward. Any questions or comments? Councillor Colley.
Thank you, and thank you for such a comprehensive report. I think as ever there's such a huge amount of activity going on. I wanted to just briefly ask a question around Tiggotts Haugh and around the next steps for supporting residents and their families in terms of the transfer and support with the new care provider.
Through yourself, Chair, I'm wondering if Caroline might want to come in and respond to that one.
Thank you, Gail. So in terms of taking forward the process, we're engaging with the people that receive, not everyone within Tiggotts Haugh actually receives support. So we're engaging with those individuals that do receive support, whether that's on a one-to-one basis or whether it's an overall meeting. We're taking that forward. As part of the process, what we've done is we've reviewed everyone's care plan, so we were clear around what needs an individual had and what care was required. We're happy to engage with families around that again, make sure that the care package is appropriate to meeting their needs. The only change will be how that care is provided. So just to provide that reassurance, Chair.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. Just before I want to make a couple of comments about Tiggotts Haugh. Can I clarify how many service users are there and how many staff are there involved at Tiggotts Haugh? Sorry, I should perhaps have given you forewarning. I was going to ask difficult questions.
So in total, there is 16 service users that are receiving support within Tiggotts Haugh.
I think it does say somewhere about the number of staff. Not sure where it is.
Do you want?
Have you got the number of staff? Yeah.
The number of staff affected is 13.
All right. Can I ask, clearly there's going to be consultation with the staff in terms of where they're going to go and what they're going to be doing. Are there potentially going to be people losing their jobs?
I think it's very hard for us to say at this point. We're going through the HR processes and looking at every option around redeployment and the other appropriate steps. Obviously, as well, there's individuals who've got choices to make around what they want to do. So it's at this point it's hard for me to say exactly what the process is, but we are following and taking advice around HR and following the appropriate process around it.
Thank you. Now, earlier on, I mean, Gordon was commenting on the improvements we've seen in the IJB and the operation, and I want to echo that. And there has been a considerable improvement in terms of the consultation, but clearly the consultation process in this particular instance has fallen short of what we would hope it to be, given the reactions that we're having. Can I just ask, because it's not the only thing that we have made difficult budgetary decisions, and some of them are going to be unpopular, but there does seem to be a problem about the consultation process not actually engaging at an early enough stage with service users and their families. I wonder if you could say a wee bit more about how that has come about.
I'll maybe speak quite generally, and Caroline might want to add some specifics. So certainly in relation to the budget saving, which was at that point in time, the options appraisal hadn't been carried out, so a decision hadn't been taken in terms of what the preferred option was. There was wide engagement around the proposal to re-provision the model of care in one of the housing with care units, and that information obviously formed part of the qualities impact assessment, which came along with the papers to support members to take a decision on that. Following that, there's obviously been a robust options appraisal, and Caroline can speak more about that. Unfortunately, this week there was some misinformation that went into the media, which meant that we needed to communicate the accurate information out as quickly as possible. There'll continue to be engagement with the service users and the staff, and I think that's really important to emphasise. So in terms of having individual meetings, meetings to meet their desires, to make sure that they have the accurate and information to support the next stages of the process. But Caroline might want to speak in more detail around that.
Thank you, Gail. The other thing, at the same time as the budget consultation took place, we wrote out to all staff that were in all 4 housing with care complexes, so they were aware that this process was going on and their job may be impacted. We also promoted in each of the 4 complexes the fact that this budget consultation was going on, and that, you know, one of the proposals was that we would be doing an options appraisal and around, you know, so one of the options was that we would be taking forward a proposal that we would re-provision one of the care in one of the units. That was well promoted, and we encouraged tenants and clients to take part in the public consultation. So,
when I've looked back at the housing review, housing with care review consultation, and as far as I can see, there were only 2 service users who actually responded. I have made this criticism on the Falkirk Council as well, so don't feel you're being got at here. But I think if we rely on the digital consultation process, then we are not getting to some of the harder to reach individuals, and we're not getting to the people who are most affected by changes. And I really think there needs to be a rethink about our consultation processes. And I'm not here challenging the decision that was made. I have to admit to having been party to that decision, but I was not clear at the time, and not clear until I recently received these papers and saw the press reports and got an updated, what do you call it? Briefing, sorry. I was not clear about the actual implications of the decision that I made. And that does concern me. Now, maybe it's my fault for not having asked all the right questions at the time, but you will be aware that, you know, there are only 3 elected representatives on the IJB, and we have papers like we have today with, 486 pages, with a week to read them. So there are difficulties for us in doing that scrutiny, and I think we really need much earlier notification of the details of the implications of certain things, so that it's not hitting the press, because that's not the best way for us to find out about what's going on.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Hannah, for that. And I think that's really helpful feedback. So I am mindful in terms of our engagement process we did around the budget savings. We were quite clear that actually digital has its place and is helpful, but it's only part of the story. And certainly our experiences in terms of going to the places where people naturally congregate. So I know that I went to this Happy Mondays lunch group, for example, and other colleagues went to lots of other groups, including going to libraries and just speaking to people. The information and the feedback we got from speaking to people, you know, in the places they go to, answering questions, was much richer than the feedback that we got from the digital. So I think that was a really important learning for us and really helpful. And we want to continue to do more of that. So in terms of how we engage, I think it's really helpful in terms of the clarity of the decisions that IJB members are asked to take, and making sure that they're as clear as possible. So I think your feedback on that we'll absolutely take on board. In terms of the recognising the role of elected members, and again, I think that's really important in terms of the closeness that elected members are to your constituents, and how we utilise that as best we can to, again, to inform supporting the proposals to help the decision-making process. So we do a briefing session for elected members on the budget proposals. I think we got feedback saying that was really well received, and they appreciated the openness and transparency within which we've shown. We have done some reflecting in terms of how do we keep that up. So it's probably been a gap. We did that to support as part of the budget proposals coming forward, but we haven't then done any engagement with elected members following that. So we are discussing about how we can do that more regularly. So we're potentially thinking about, would it be helpful to have further briefing sessions with elected members to I suppose keep everybody abreast of progress and what might be coming up. So we have obviously a detailed programme plan with key milestones. So not to share the whole plan, but we can probably highlight things that we think would be helpful for elected members to be aware of, but also to if you're speaking to your constituents, to help us in terms of that feedback as well. So we're proposing to put in those on a more regular basis, and again would welcome feedback in terms of what's the right level in terms of frequency, if you feel that'd be helpful. And again, if there's anything else that you think we could do to ensure that we are engaging better with elected members, we'd certainly take that on board.
Thank you for that. As some of my colleagues will know, I'm always up for another briefing or a training or anything of that sort. I'm complaining about the size of the agenda, but I'm not complaining about the amount of information. We do need more information, not less. But just finally, in terms of the housing with care issue, is the same approach going to be taken in other properties that have housing with care, that are housing care properties?
So the decision by IJB was to change the model of care on one of the housing with care properties. So that's the decision that we're progressing. There hasn't been any other decisions in that regard. If there were proposals to do something else, that would have to come through IJB for a further decision, but there's no current proposals.
Okay, thank you, convener.
Okay, thanks. Roger, thank you for your patience. Can I bring you in now?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of comments, if that's okay, about Tiggett's Hall. I was involved in the options appraisal with the other unions, and I mean, we're all aware of the need to make cuts in the partnership, and we're told that the decision to be made that one of the 4 housing care with care facilities would stop being housing with care. And my view, and obviously it's subjective, is that the options appraisal was a fairly basic process. That I could not call it a robust process in any way. It was very basic and simple, but done in a fairly hurried way, and yeah, that is subjective. Second point I'd like to make is that my understanding of the whole reason for housing with care is that it's a sort of step between people in their own normal tenancies. Normal, maybe is not the right word, but and care facilities, and it is very effective, in my view, at allowing people to remain in their tenancy in their own home longer than might be the case. So I think it's important to recognise that the level of care that can be provided in housing with care cannot be replicated in the same way to prevent somebody from moving to a care home as would a normal package of care in somebody's own tenancy, or even an adapted tenancy, as the Tickets Hall tenancies will be. So inevitably that leads to the conclusion that some people who care needs will rise to a certain level will not be able to be maintained so easily in their own tenancy in Tickets Hall, and will end up in either hospital or a care home. So I think it's disappointing that the partnership has to make these cuts, and it's going to affect people in their own homes at times. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Any other points or comments, Elaine? Sharon, sorry.
Thank you. I would just like to acknowledge Gil, and thanks to Gil and Marie for reaching out to the carers, which has been good. And in looking through the reports, we can see that there's been a lot of carer input that has been acknowledged. But I've only got a few questions on carers being involved. Are carers going to be involved in the current strategic commissioning plan? And then the other thing is, in one of the change of test methodologies, it's speaking to the people who are involved in caring at home. So are the carers also going to be part of that process? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, and it's good to see you here, and it's good. I really enjoy coming out to meet with the carers. I think it's really insightful, and I think that the support that the carers provide to those that they care for is immeasurable. So absolutely, the answer is yes to your question. So I think hopefully we've demonstrated in terms of the work that we've been doing over the last year how valuable we do find the input of carers, and how much we're linking in with the Carer Centre in particular, and yourselves, to ensure the carer's voice is absolutely central to what we're planning, and to inform what the plans are as well. It's not just around consultation around a plan, but actually how do we bring the voices of carers into the centre of our planning processes. I'm wondering if Tom's going to be leading on the strategic planning process. I wonder if you might want to say a few more words on that, Tom.
Through yourself, Chair. Thank you very much for the question. Much appreciated the opportunity to kind of explain where we are with that. We have at the moment a strategic commissioning plan, which is of course part of the core legislation. It was integrated into the core legislation back in 2015 for the 2016 integration programme, and ours currently runs out in March of next year. Now, in such instances, the legislation is fairly clear what should happen. One is that you review your existing strategic plan, you update it, and then you redate it in many respects for the next period of time. I'm considering at the moment is that if you think about the last time this was reviewed in 2023 or previous to that in 2019, so much has changed, so much has evolved since then. There were so many certainties back there that feel less than certain now, including the economic climate, the pandemic and everything else. So we are of the view that the secondary option, which remains within the legislation, which is to do a new one completely, is perhaps the best way forward, rather than endlessly try to tweak and rearrange an existing one to take account of the significant changes that have happened, and also our significant strategic intent going forward. So to get to that point, what we're doing just now between now and coming back to the IGB in September is reviewing the existing plan, which is kind of what you need to do in order to draw the conclusion that it doesn't really remain fit for purpose, and therefore we should have a new one. And so that's the plan. And of course, at this stage, it's not within my gift to say that that will be the conclusion of the review group, but we're assuming that that's to be the case. So at the moment, we've begun to consider the implications of starting a new one. And in starting a new one, you really are starting all of the re-engagement, co-production, consultation, all of the things that were a characteristic of the original one back in 2016. And so that's the plan. And therefore, I can assure you that a real central plank of our going forward from here on in is complete co-production and complete engagement, not doing something and then seeing if you're okay with it. It is actually about sitting down with as many people as possible and talking about the world as it now is and the world as it goes forward and what that looks like in a Falkirk context and what that looks like for the IGB to commit to. So that's the plan at the moment. So hopefully in the September IGB, you'll have a real clarity around about the timeline for that and what that will all look like. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. And the last question is just on the service level details. And you gave out the numbers for the options that are going to be involved in the service level, you know, the SDS level. No. Sorry, ahead of myself.
Okay, we'll come back to that question then at another time, I think. Okay, thanks everyone. So the recommendation is that we consider and comment on the report, and I think we've done that fairly fully. So I will move us on to item 6, which is the final outturn report for 24-25, and Marie is online. Marie. Okay, thanks, Marie. It's a very clear presentation. Do we have questions or comments? Councillor Colley?
Thank you. I suppose that I must have to welcome the improved position. I think I know that there's been a lot of work by all the staff and the partnership to try and bring some of the not only savings but some of the challenges in terms of the overspend into greater balance, we'll call it that way, and to be able to have a bit of support for the contingency reserves, I think is really important to bring it to that level. So I think that's great. I've just got a couple of, one question and another is a comment. I think the point around supporting the hospice at home, I think most of the people in the district are extremely supportive of the support around palliative and end of life care, and I think it's a really important service, and I would certainly be keen to continue that support and endorse that decision. And in terms of a question is in 5.9 around a business case around the equipment and adaptations. And I just wondered if we had a timeline for that.
Okay, can you come back on that one, Marie?
Nothing else for myself, but I'm wondering, Martin, as head of service, if there's anything else you want to add.
Not really, other than members will be aware that there's been a review of the joint equipment store for some time, and they are progressing the work describing of equipment. And the intention would be that actually we change our model for prescribing equipment, which will then have an impact on the budget overall. Really, that's about looking at the most efficient use of equipment and ensuring we're using the most efficient way of ordering equipment, etc. But that work's ongoing. As Marie highlighted, the plan would be when our Living Well lead commences employment in August, the first task they will be given is to conclude that review. And at that point, once it's completed, we'll bring something back to the board that will set out plans going forward.
Thanks. I suppose it was just if we've any indicative timeline. Obviously, aware that the review has been we'll call it a work in progress for a while.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah, can I bring you in?
Thank you. I would echo some of the comments that have already been made about the being happy about the improvement in the situation, and congratulations to Gail and Marie and all the other staff who have brought about that improvement. But I think we have to temper that with the comment that it may be an improvement, but it's marginal, and with the IJB is still in a seriously difficult financial situation. I wonder if we could have a bit more just comparative information, because I'm aware that this is a problem for IJBs across Scotland. And I wonder if Marie could perhaps say a little more about where we come in the pecking order in terms of are we worse, are we better, are we middle of the road?
Yep, I think that's a fair comment. Marie, do you want to come back on that?
Thank you. That it does help, and I would just also want to add that I do appreciate the increased engagement that there has been with IJB board members and the increased transparency about the issues that are being faced, that we've had, the sessions we've had over the recent year or so. So thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, can I bring you in next? On you go, Marie. Okay, sorry, Sharon.
Sorry, it's just a comment that I would like to make. It's in Appendix 5. That's in relationship to the Carers Fund and the Carers Improvement Fund. Looking at the figures, the reserved in the balances, initially there was almost 2 million that was provided. But as we look at the end of that, there's nothing for the Carers Improvement Fund, but there's, I think, 482 for the Carers Fund, Improvement Fund. What I would just like to comment on is obviously this is reflecting how difficult things are, and we accept things are difficult and difficult decisions have been made. But it's just disheartening just to see that the services that are needed will be affected because the fund has been reduced. Thank you.
Okay, Marie.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Marie. So a slightly improved position from what we were expecting, but as has been said, we are still in a difficult financial position, and that's going to mean some difficult decisions to come. There are a number of recommendations in this report, and I will read them out just for absolute clarity of decision making. So we're being asked to note the final outturn figures. Note that 1.999 million general underspend in health has been utilised to offset the overspend in social care. To approve use of a further 4.703 million from non-recurring reserves to fund the overspend within social care, to note the final non-recurring reserves position and the related risk set out in the paper, to ratify the payment of up to 1 year of funding to Strathcarron Hospice, Hospice at Home of up to £50,000, and to authorise the Chief Officer to issue revised directions to both Falkirk Council and NHS Forth Valley as per the summary at Appendix 7. Are we happy to approve those recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Can we move on then to item 7, which is the self-directed support policy? Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to present the proposed self-directed support policy, which has been developed to enhance our local implementation of Self-Directed Support Scotland Act 2013. The policy has been co-produced by a short life working group, which includes officers from our service and representation from the Carer Centre, Advocacy Service and STS Forth Valley. Its purpose is to strengthen our commitment to choice, control and personalised care for individuals with eligible social care needs. Section 4.1 to 4.3 outlines the background and context to the policy. As a reminder, the 2013 Act introduced 4 options for how individuals can receive their care, which is first direct payment, individual service fund, arranged services, or a mix of these options. Unfortunately, national implementation has been inconsistent. Locally, we've also seen limited uptake. Section 4.4 onwards outlines our approach. The Short Life Working Group developed this policy based on best practice, the recent STS framework of standards, and the finding from the National Improvement Group. The new policy will apply to all client groups and clearly outlines our approach to supporting choice and consistency in SES delivery. Following approval, we will develop a detailed implementation plan focusing on staff training and support, communication plan, updating procedures and embedding audit and performance tools. Our target for policy rollout, if approved, is September 2025. Section 5.5 outlines that the policy was subject to public consultation, and although response was modest, the feedback was consistent. 3 main themes emerged, which was a lack of clear and accessible information, limited real choice due to staffing and provider availability, and insufficiency support to make informed decisions. These concerns will directly inform our implementation strategy with a strong emphasis on improving that communication, staff training and system navigation. In terms of implications, these are outlined in Section 5. This policy will not require additional funding. The existing STS team will lead on implementation. We do anticipate that better understanding and access to option 1 may lead to more individuals choosing it, which not only enhances personal choice and control, but can be more cost effective for the system. Due to identified risks and in line with best practice, the policy does not permit the use of self-employed personal assistants under option 1 at this stage. So to go back to Section 2, the recommendations are that we're asking the board today to approve the proposed policy, noting that an implementation plan will be support implementation, and authorise that the Chief Officer can issue a direction to Falkirk Council to begin implementation. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. It's such an important area and it's good to see those comments being taken on board. Comments or questions from members? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I think you've mentioned the fact that there's limited uptake locally, and I think that's the case across the country. Now, for those people who do take it up, it can be a really beneficial in terms of the choices that they're able to make. But I get many comments from people about how bureaucratic the process is, how the administration of the funds is really difficult, and that people don't see it as a viable option. I wonder if you could say a little more about how the changing policy will actually make it easier for people to take it on board, and also say a little more about, you mentioned that the policy doesn't permit self-employed personal assistants. If you just say a little more about the rationale behind that?
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. So in terms of the bureaucratic process, I would agree with that. So part of what we're doing is the short life working group that's developed the policy is also now reviewing the procedures and the processes around it, because we're clear that the accessibility of them, and that goes hand in hand with having processes that are, clear, accessible, but also making sure that we've got the right support for people so that they can choose option 1, 2, or 4. So that's part of that would be our intention around implementation of it. That that we're raising awareness around it, but also with that accessibility, we're being clear about streamlining the processes as much as possible. Taking on board that there's legal requirements around it. So like in terms of reconciliation, if you're choosing option 1, you have to be able to reconcile the money that you're receiving and show how it's been used. But I believe that there's different ways that we can do that would make it less burdensome and making sure that we've got the right support for individuals. In terms of the second question, that self-employed PA, the issue is that so you can have a self-employed person for specific tasks if they're not care, but in terms of self-employed PA, there's issues around tax and reporting around that. So you can employ a PA still directly, but you would be the employer. The issue is when you've got a self-employed individual. So there is issues about if that person decides not to go to work today, there's no support automatically put in for the individual. Whereas if you're directly contracting with someone as a PA, then there's holiday pay built into their contract and there's contingency arrangements around for individuals. So it's based on the advice from our legal section and also from HMRC around you can't actually be a self-employed PA. So we've just kind of taken that advice on board and put that into the policy in terms of best practice.
Thank you, convener.
Okay, Roger, can I bring you in? Okay, Carolyn.
Thank you, Roger. So in terms of, I'd welcome your feedback about you as being someone that's actually using option 1, because part of what we're doing is engaging with people that are overseeing option 1 to see actually, what works in the process, what doesn't work. So I would anticipate you'd be contacted around that, Roger, separately. In terms of the EPIA, we had to base it on the information that we've got available. And actually, one of the things that we've recognised as we've developed this policy is there's real issues around our data collection around option 1 and 2 particularly. So that's something that we're developing, but I recognise what you're saying, Roger, but it's actually about how we evidence it based on the available data that we had.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Councillor Colley.
Thank you. This is obviously something I'm very enthusiastic about. I should be, as someone who was involved in some of the work around the legislation and the policy at a national level. So I think that if you speak to anybody across Scotland, it's it's a great piece of legislation, and there has been a real implementation gap. So Falkirk is not unique in that. I think it's it's challenging to continue some of the business as usual while still developing, while continue to develop new options and different options. I think it's a little bit disappointing, the percentage who weren't offered SDS options, but I think it's about how do we build this into ordinary practice, that actually when you and I think option 4 sits best there, because it doesn't need to be option 1, it doesn't need to be option 2 or option 3, but actually for most people sometimes a mix really works for them, and having those different options available. And I think Councillor Hannah's point about having really clear information, and I think will help people. I think it's worth noting that option 3 is a perfectly legitimate option, and as long as individuals are offered the opportunity to consider other ones, then it's a perfectly legitimate option as well. And I think it really builds on the very, very recently passed care reform bill, and the getting it right for everybody, that actually we just think a little bit differently and make sure that we record those conversations, because reality, I've been in the position of supporting family members when actually you just want to, you don't really want to think about some of these things. You just want to go, right, I just need a service in, I just need support in them. I don't really care how it's provided, but actually as conversations develop, and just if things go on longer, you might want to think about things in a different way, so having different options. I had one particular question which was around 10.8 in the policy, and about those kind of really creative options, and around art, video, social support, etc. And I guess maybe how we, as a partnership, encourage the development of those type of options, and encourage the sharing of information, because I know even like in my ward there's like lots and lots of things that I could think, well, actually they're kind of that creative option, but are people aware of them? And I guess the challenge for how do staff have an awareness of all the different things that are going on, and they change all the time. So it was just a wee question about that.
Okay, Callan, do you want to come back on that one?
Thank you for the comments, Councillor Colley. I think I would see it as part of the work for the Short Life Working Group, that we would look at how do we make sure. So I think it's really key that we've got, the carer centre as part of that, and we've got SDS Forth Valley, and they're really good at signposting and really highlighting these other options around how you can creatively meet an individual's needs. And what we've been doing is looking at, is there certain kind of stories, case studies of people that are currently receiving that type of support, and we're thinking that would be a good way of actually explaining how SDS can work in practice around the different options. So we're really keen to, from that kind of lived experience point of view, this is how it's worked for this individual, and look at how we make that information as accessible as possible. So when we were doing the consultation, one of the things that we did was we had a short video on the consultation that explained, and it was people talking about, this is what option 1, this is what it's meant to me. So it's people that are receiving the service under the options, and the feedback we were getting for the people that filled in the questionnaire and responded to the consultation was that it was really powerful. And we're thinking, is there a way that we can use that to actually showcase the different ways that we can use these options? Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I think great policy, but implementation gap very much sums up my view on SDS as well. So anything we can do to make it easier and to make it truly personal choice, I think is absolutely the right direction to go. Okay, can I bring us to the recommendations then? So we're asked to approve the policy, note that an implementation plan will be developed, and authorise the Chief Officer to issue the attached direction to Falkirk Council. Can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, folks. Moving on then to item 8, which is the locality planning update. Carolyn, you again.
Thank you, Chair. It's with great pleasure I introduce the report on locality planning, the plan for the East Locality area. I'm going to give an overview, then my colleague James, who's joined us on Teams, will cover the main points of the East Locality Plan and the consultation process that was undertook. Falkirk Social Work HSCP has established 3 localities as part of its commitment to deliver services tailored to the needs of the community. The development of locality plans is included in the action plan for year 1 of the HSCP strategic plan for 23 to 26, which was agreed in March 2023. Locality plans should demonstrate how outcomes and priorities for the HSCP strategic plan will be delivered in each locality by addressing the needs and challenges of its communities. In September 24, the IJB endorsed the approach for the development of locality plans, which included a phased approach with central locality presented to the IJB on the 31st of January. The IJB approved the central plan with a proviso that a timescale will be included in its delivery plan. The delivery plan template has been updated to include this request alongside measures and leads to take on the work. The central plan now is moved on to the implementation phase, which has been overseen by the Central Locality Delivery Group. The group is reconvened in June with additional members to focus on this and supporting the delivery. The East Locality Plan has been delivered by the East Locality Delivery Group, with oversight provided by the steering group. Both groups, again, are multi-agency and collaborated in the development of the process and plan, incorporating feedbacks and lessons learned from the process used for the Central Locality Plan. The East Locality Plan is based on available data for the East Locality, evidence of local needs and challenges, and feedback gathered through the consultation process. The plan also recognises the good work being undertaken currently in localities and aims to build on this and support it further. I'm going to pass over to James, who's going to talk through the overview of the plan, if that's okay, Chair.
Yep, do come in, James, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Just if anyone's got any questions, myself and James are happy to take them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Great to see the second of the 3 plans coming through to us. Do we have any questions or comments from members? Fiona.
Sorry, I'm taking it because I'm not chairing it anymore. I'm taking the opportunity just to got lots of comments. Sorry, Chair. Just to say, it's great to see this next plan come through, and I think in particular, the point about rural carers, and I think quite often people think about Falkirk and they don't really think about the totality of its district, and actually some areas can face particular problems that are related to rurality, and the fact that you're not that far away from Edinburgh or wherever doesn't actually it doesn't actually mean that you have additional transport, you have additional services, etc. So I think really good to see that identification, and also the clear link with poverty and its impact on health and well-being. And I think really important that we ensure that individuals are signposted and supported in that space, because it's um, I think one of the critical areas to help people improve their health and well-being.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, clear links with the population health approach as well there. Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you for this. Obviously, as one of the councillors representing part of the area that this covers, I have a particular interest in it. And I did try to meet up with James in the kind of consultation process, but various things got in the way and it didn't happen. So I really appreciate all the work that's done. I'm pleased about the level of consultation, the number of different individuals and groups that have been engaged with on a face-to-face basis, which is, as everybody will know, one of my pet subjects. I just wonder if one of you, I don't know whether it be yourself, Caroline, or James, say a bit more about primary care and the GP services, because I am aware of the challenges faced by primary care in the area because of the amount of new build and because of the demand for the service. I wonder if you could say a wee bit more about what the comments have been on that and what's within the plan on that.
Caroline, do you want to come in?
So I think James would probably have the detail around that more than myself.
Okay, on you go, James.
Partially, but I see that Dr. Heron has got his hand up as well, so it would be useful maybe as one of the GPs who actually operates in that area.
Yep, David, can I bring you in then?
Thank you, Dr. Hearn. Yes, I mean, I think that is the key, is the access to primary care in the area. As someone who very recently hung on the phone for an hour and a half before someone answered, that was not Dr. Heron's particular practice, I will say, but I know very well how what problems constituents are having, and it does need an answer, but perhaps the locality plan's not the the way to do that. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, then, oh, sorry, Fiona.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Just in, I suppose, just in relation to the partnership, and I guess where that links in with the health board, and I know that there's some work, but I can't quite recall it in relation to the health board and GP premises, but also how it links in with the council for housing developments, and anyone who's on planning knows that this is one of my hobby horses, that actually about planning gain. So it was just a general question. If there's not an answer just now, that's fine, but just maybe something we could follow up on.
Okay, Gail, do you want to come in this one?
Yeah, so just to confirm that the provision of buildings, if I describe it in that way, sits with the partners. So in terms of the responsibilities for council's buildings, sits with Falkirk Council, and for NHS buildings sits with NHS Forth Valley. The operation and the activities and the commissioning of general practice sits with the partnerships. We also work quite closely, well, we need to work really closely, not quite, very closely in partnership around that. So there are capital constraints. There's lots of complexities around planning gain, which I'm not an expert in, but we all have an understanding to some degree around that, which makes that quite challenging. So it is a regular topic of conversation. And I think we've got a paper on primary care sustainability later on the agenda. But actually, there's a number of things that all need to line up together to help us move forward in that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we will come back to primary care later in the meeting. Okay, so to take us to the recommendations, we're being asked to approve the East Locality Plan and Delivery Plan and authorise the Chief Officer to issue the associated directions to the Council and NHS. Can we agree that?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I've been made aware that there is a kind of intermittent issue with the live feed. So just to let anyone who is able to watch that know that the full recording will be available after the meeting. So if you do miss some of the excitement, you can always go back and watch it again later. But we are doing our best to fix those technical issues in the background as we go on. Okay, can we move on to item 9 then, which is the IGB governance report? Marie, you're leading in this one. Thanks, Marie. So there's a lot in there. Just one thing to say, David McNiven is not with us today. He's actually on holiday at the moment, so couldn't make it along. But having talked to David, he has a long history in health and social care and in transformation. So I think he's going to bring something slightly different, as well as hopefully continuing Margot's great work in ensuring that we do always think about the users of services. So I think it'll be good. Comments, questions, colleagues? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you for this. Yes, I'm really pleased that we have, because I know it's not always easy to get a service user representative. Margot has been very hardworking and has given a great service on the IJB for all the time that I've been here. And I look forward to meeting David and look forward to his input. So I'm pleased that we've got that organised. Also, I was very pleased to see the inclusion of care experience as a protected characteristic. We made that decision on the Falkirk Council to do that and recommended it to the IJB. It brings another element of equality to the whole process. Just in more general terms, I'm conscious that the integration joint board is undergoing so many changes in terms of our committees. The Health and Social Care Partnership is undergoing so many changes in terms of the operation. Are we going to come back to it at some point just to say these things are working and these things are not? Because it does seem to me that given the extent of the changes, it may be that not everything works as we would hope it would.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah, and for your comments. So I think in terms of when we've been trying to make sure we've got the right governance to support the job that we have to do in hand, and I think the early conversations and discussions we have had through the development sessions, recognising actually asking ourselves the question, is the governance right for what we need it to do, is a good thing to do. And we also recognise at that point in time it's good to do that on a regular basis. So absolutely would be intended to through a development session to come back at the appropriate time to ask ourselves, is what we've put in place doing what it needs to do, or do we need to continue to improve it, if I use that language? So absolutely, it's good practice, and we would intend to do that.
Thank you, convener.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, I'll take us to the recommendations. There are quite a few to note, so I won't read them all out. But in terms of agreement, we're being asked to reappoint Roger as the Falkirk Council staff rep, to agree the changes to standing orders as laid out there, authorise Chief Officer to amend the standing orders in relation to voting numbers at time, and to agree to recognise care experience as a protected characteristic in terms of characteristics defined under the Equalities Act. Are we? Okay, and we also need to approve the appointment of David as the new IJB service user rep. So can I ask that we agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Item 10 then is shifting the balance of care. Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. This report outlines a strategic test of change aimed at shifting the balance of care from acute hospital-based provision to enhanced community-based support within the Falkirk area. This initiative has been developed through collaborative discussions between the Health and Social Care Partnership, NHS Forth Valley and Falkirk Council. It's a targeted response to current and persistent challenges across the health and care system, including increasing service demand, pressures from delayed discharges and prolonged hospital stays, a need for greater integration and innovation, whole system financial constraints, and the requirement to create capacity for planned care within the acute sector. Test of change was approved at the NHS Executive Team on the 28th of April 2025. Implementation commenced immediately with the plan going live in June 2025. The aims are to enable the discharge of 32 additional patients who no longer require acute hospital care and release the capacity of a 32-bedded ward to support planned care or act as a contingency during periods of peak demand. The model being adopted is a discharge to assess approach. This allows individuals to return home or to a homely environment where their care needs can be assessed in a more appropriate and person-centred setting. The funding and resourcing, as outlined in the report, is non-recurring funding of 2.027 million is being provided by NHS Forth Valley for the 25-26 financial year. This will support community care packages and associated infrastructure to sustain the discharge of the 32 individuals. Should the test of change prove successful, a comprehensive business case will be developed and submitted by November 2025 to inform budget setting for 26-27, with a view to transitioning this initiative into recurring practice. This approach is anticipated to be cost neutral in the long term, as the associated costs of maintaining hospital-based care will be offset by the reallocation of existing ward budgets to fund community-based alternatives. The following benefits are expected: a recurring reduction of 32 delayed discharges, shorter hospital stays and reduced patient harm, fewer direct transitions from acute care to long-term residential care, enhanced flow and efficiency within the acute system, and improved outcomes for individuals through person-centred home-based support. This initiative also supports the National Health and Wellbeing Outcomes, particularly indicators 19 and 22, which relate to hospital discharge timeliness and appropriateness. A joint implementation team led by senior officers from acute and community services has been coordinating the process. Initially, discharges at the start of June were slow as we developed our pathways in practice. The pace has intensified over the past week. The purpose of these meetings are to respond to escalated risks around discharge planning, ensuring workforce allocation, consider equipment provision, technology, data and comms, and ensure effective care package commissioning. The risks are outlined in pages 205 to 209 and have been carefully assessed, and mitigation plans are in place, and these developed as we go through the process. These include looking at workforce, care home and care at home capacity, communication with staff and families, and ongoing evaluation and flexibility and implementation. Daily MDTs, multidisciplinary meetings, and daily risk and issues meetings. Additionally, learning has been drawn from Dundee City Partnership, experience with their discharge to assess model, which operates across Tayside and has yielded positive outcomes and financial efficiencies. Overall, the test of change represents a significant opportunity to realign our system in a way that is more sustainable, person-centred and outcome-focused. By supporting individuals to receive the care they need in the most appropriate setting, we can relieve pressure on our acute services while improving the overall experience for patients and their families. Thank you. I welcome any questions.
Thanks, Carolyn. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you for this report. And first of all, I want to say I find this proposal really exciting. It's actually beginning to do what integration is all about, and it's long past time that approach has been taken forward. So I am very pleased about that. Second thing I would say is, because you talked about being sustainable, person-centred and outcome-focused, all these lovely buzzwords. The reality is this is about looking at getting people back into their own homes and getting them there more quickly but safely. So I think more power to your elbows would be, first of all, what I would say. That said, however, I'm going to beat my usual drum about consultation, because elected representatives have been getting concerns raised about what's happening, about the fact that there's going to be closure of Ward A11, and about the potential job loss issues. Now, if people are saying these things, I don't see it in your report, so as what's happening, but I think it's clear that we've got an issue about the way in which people are being informed about the changes and they're being consulted?
Thank you, Councillor Hannah, and we're really pleased about this piece of work. It is about whole system working, and it's something that really signals the cultural change that we've seen across Forth Valley and how we all work together. So in terms of your specific question around does this mean job losses, so in terms of within the hospital, there's ongoing processes. There's no proposals for any job losses in the hospital. My understanding is that there's opportunities for people to be to work in other wards. So they're going through the usual organisational change processes under the NHS policies, and that engagement is ongoing with staff and trade unions. There's been regular engagement, and that continues. And our aim is to support staff in their choices and options. And there's actually quite a lot of options at the moment in relation to decisions around over recruitment linked to the NHS Forth Valley plans around supporting more student nurses in particular to come in. So there are opportunities, albeit the personal impacts of people that are used to working in one ward being asked to work in a different ward is obviously difficult, but I know the management are working really hard to support staff on an individual basis.
Thank you for that. I think that's very reassuring. But can I ask say a little bit more about the ways in which the people who are affected by this are being consulted and informed about it, but also just, I should have said first as well, is there going to be a bigger demand on the social care services and social care staff? Because it seems to me that if we're taking more people into the community, that clearly shifts that responsibility.
So I'll maybe start, and Caroline might want to add more detail. So in terms of there is very regular communication, the implementation of this has been at pace, which hopefully is good because this is about the right care at the right time for people to meet their needs. So in terms of by shifting the balance of care in terms of people who are clinically ready to go home, to help them get home does require more resource in the community, and the resource shift, as Caroline mentioned, the £2 million, that allows some capacity for us to bring in board additional resource to support people in a more homely environment. The model around discharge to assess, so that basically means if somebody is in hospital at the moment, and it's predominantly people who are classified as being delayed in their discharge, so they're not in the right place for their care needs, they will go home with up to 24/7 care into their own home. Not everybody will go into their own home, but into a homely environment. That is a very high capacity level of care in their own home. The hypothesis is that actually if somebody's in their own home, they're much more empowered than they would be in a hospital bed. So in terms of how do we work with the person to help them maintain the independence that they would wish to and have the ability to gain. So it is quite a high intensive model. In early days, our hypothesis is that actually if we get people to the right place, we can help them maximise their independence. So their ongoing care needs will be optimised, if I use that term. What we've seen in terms of when we look at the data, we have a lot of people who go straight from hospital into a long-term care home. So the percentage of that is around about 60% for Falkirk residents. The national average is 40%. So our pathway from hospital into long-term care is higher than the national average. So we're hoping by supporting people to come home with the right level of care might allow more people to have that as a trajectory. And again, when we speak to people, most people want to be independent for as long as possible in their own homes. So we're helping people meet their own outcomes. But Caroline might want to add some more detail around that.
Yeah, so in terms of the transfer of the resource, that's meant that we've been able to look at what resources we put around our individuals. So what we've done is we've enhanced the service that's provided from REACH. So AHPs like physios and OTs going in, providing that support very quickly when someone's discharged. They're going in on a daily basis and assessing an individual. What we knew is we had a lot of capacity within our private care sector. So they're supporting this process, and we're using partnering can't say the word, we're working with them, you know, around looking at what needs that person has and adapting the support on a daily basis. So we've actually involved the external providers in our daily MDT meetings. So they're part of the discussion around, you know, how's that person coping, what's going on, and then having that discussion with the person's carer, and also with the client, how are they feeling, how, you know, and making sure that we're adapting the care and really rehabbing the person as much as possible to their potential.
Thank you. Just one last point is obviously getting people back into their own homes. It's what people want, generally speaking, and that has to be good. And I wish you all success in this test to change. When will we be getting a kind of report back? Because there's mention about it's starting, it's moving at pace. But when are we going to be getting a report back of the outcome? Because I'll be excited to see that.
So there's obviously lots of data being gathered, and I think it's really important to state. So there's some. I mean, we're literally towards the end of week 2 at the moment, and we're taking very much an agile approach in terms of every single day. There's lots to learn, and how do we put that learning into practice to improve what we're doing? So we're already though seeing some positive impacts, some sort of examples of people where they've had really good progress so far, but it is early days, so we're very cautious around that. We're also seeing improvements in terms of you know, the number of people delayed in their discharges is seeing a fairly rapid improvement there, which is good. But again, we're literally at the end of week 2. It's very early days, and it's really important that we capture all of the learning. Understand is, you know, we refer to this as a test of change, but with a hypothesis that will be successful. But we need to, the test of change is about understanding what all the impacts are across our system. Are there any unintended consequences? What do we do? You know, so there might be consequences that we might not have anticipated, but how do we capture that? And then how do we support those unintended consequences? So while that work is ongoing, we continue to learn and use the data to improve what we put in place. The intention is to pull all of that together, you know, so we're taking that evaluation approach from pre-start to start to during, and then we'll pull all that together. The expectation, again, our hypothesis is this is going to be successful, but it might not be, and that's okay. So we're, you know, if it's not, that's okay. We'll learn a lot from the process. So we're intending to pull together the information into a business case, which would come forward in November, and that will have a lot more detail around the impacts and the evidence, etc. If it's not leading to something, so if it's not meeting our hypothesis, we will still pull together that evaluation report, but it might not be a business case to seek continuation. But November would be the time scale for that, and that would allow us to build it into our budget planning process, and also for our partners in terms of their financial planning. So that timeline works well. The implementation of the test of change is funded through till the end of this financial year. So again, with that hypothesis, it will be successful. That would allow for that continuation of it becoming business as usual if it is delivering the anticipated benefits.
Thank you. I know I said that was my last question, but I've just remembered another one. If so, forgive me. Just one other issue is the links with primary care, which haven't been particularly covered in this. One of the problems about delayed discharge sometimes is the link between the hospital and the GP surgery, and the link between social care and the GP surgery. Are you focusing in on that process, that transference, because that's going to be fundamental in terms of making it work?
Yeah, I think that's a really key point to make. So in terms of all of the resources and supports that's available in the community, in terms of ensuring that the right supports are in place, looking for any unintended consequences, and you're quite right in terms of when we've done deep dives before in terms of understanding what sometimes doesn't work as well in terms of that supported discharge and the communication between secondary and primary care in terms of discharge letters. That's been something that we have picked up before. It's been a recurring theme. I think in terms of the daily MDTs, now we've got GPs have been invited onto that. And I think the understanding what's the implications for primary care is really key. So at the moment we're starting, you know, as every day we gather more data, but we're starting with very limited data because the number of people who have come through this are a very small number at the moment. So it's really important to gather that and to make sure that we've got the right capacity in the right place when we're talking about shifting the balance of care. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring David in next, talking of GPs. Thanks, David. Yeah, I mean that is very much the point. It's a test of change. We'll find out exactly what the implications are by doing it. But you know, these are all patients who've been assessed as medically ready to be discharged. So you know we are talking about people who, had we done nothing, would remain stuck in hospital, which is as others have said, not the place anyone wants to be. Robert, can I bring you in now? Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As you know, I'm the staff side rep in the NHS, so it's just to reassure Councillor Hannah and IGB as a whole that the trade unions have been fully consulted with throughout this organisational change, and the organisational change process is now been formally ratified at a meeting on Wednesday the 18th there, and the trade unions are fully behind this initiative to get patients out to a place where they should be, not sitting in a acute hospital when it's making them deteriorate, etc. And it makes it more difficult for them to come out. Just in Dr. Hernall's part, I agree we should probably bring some medical finances with the patients. However, that was a ward which had no medical cover at all, apart from locums, so we'd have to look at how that was done. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Robert. That's good information to have. Roger, can I bring you in next? Thanks, Roger. Yeah, I mean, communication between everyone involved is going to be key to this, so that's really good comment and will be taken on board. I think this is really exciting. As others have said, it's what integration is supposed to be about. It's about getting people in the right place, giving them the support they need in the place that they want it, and moving the resources to do that. So my thanks to everyone who's been involved in putting this together. I know there's been a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes by partnership staff, by NHS Forth Valley staff, by council staff to get this started. And as Councillor Hannah said, it's going to be really interesting to read the report when it comes through and see how it's all worked out in the real world. So in terms of recommendations, we're being asked to note and endorse the test of change and to note that those reports and proposals will. Sorry, Fiona.
No, it's okay. Carry on.
Sharon, did you want to come in?
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. It's just a comment that I wanted to make about this policy. And I'm just pleased to say that the carers, the unpaid carers who are staying with the family, that the policy has realized the risk, that it could be risk that people will be stressed and reluctant, thinking the person is coming back, are they ready, and everything else. But in this policy, it's been highlighted that the communication will be done at an early stage and in effective manner with everybody else. And we look forward to seeing that in practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we know that when people come home, then unpaid carers are going to be playing a great role in their recovery. So yes, that's to be in place. Okay, if there is no one else, so in terms of recommendations, we're being asked to note and endorse the test of change and note that report will come back in November, looking at what we do from then on in. Those recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, we are, I think, probably more than halfway through the agenda, so that's probably a good time to take a break. Can we take maybe 15 minutes and I'll ask people to come back at 11:35? Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, thanks everyone for coming back. We will restart. I think we've got to item 11, which is the clinical care governance framework. Nicola.
Thanks, Chair. So this item is a little bit briefer than the ones that we've had before, but nonetheless important. So the paper presents a revision of the Falkirk Health and Social Care Partnership Clinical and Care Governance Framework. All revisions to the document are noted via track changes, so it's easy for board members to see the proposals. Our current clinical and care governance framework was developed following the establishment of IJB in April 2016, and it was approved by the IJB in 2018. So given the time that's passed and the recent developments relating to the governance structure, a review of the framework is timely. You'll notice that the revised framework acknowledges the recent approved changes to the IJB governance structure and notes that the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee now provides IJB with assurance in relation to clinical and care governance matters. The framework also details developments in relation to the Clinical and Care Governance Management Group and the associated subgroups where relevant items are discussed and scrutinised. The Performance Audit and Assurance Committee, the NHS Clinical Governance Working Group and the Chief Social Work Officer has reviewed the updated framework and are all in agreement with the proposed changes. So today I'm looking for the board to approve the draft framework, please, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. Do we have questions or comments? Not seeing any. Okay, can we approve the revised framework then?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item 12 then takes us to the supplementary papers, and it's the annual performance report for 24-25. Tom.
I'm not sure if my colleague Leslie's here. I think she intended to lead on it, but if she's not, I'll just go for it anyway, if that's okay. Members will be familiar that the Public Bodies Scotland Act in 2014 specified that an annual performance report must be produced by integration authorities on an annual basis to ensure that performance is open and accountable, etc. The intended report itself has to have a minimum reporting on the core integration indicators to support assessment and performance. It also should include data from both the reporting year and previous years. Over and above that, there is an assumption that the partnerships will include additional and relevant information beyond the minimum set in relation to local performance, reviews of strategic plan, etc., the assessment of performance relating to financial planning and performance and best value, etc. So this is the newest report that we have available in front of you. Hopefully members have had a chance to have a look through it. I don't know, I can't see, is Leslie there? Or no? Okay. And I will be able to answer as many questions as I possibly can.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Do we have questions or comments, colleagues? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you for this report. It's clearly very important that we have the measurement of the performance of the Health and Social Care Partnership. There's so much in it that it would be difficult to pick out key issues. I wonder, though, if you could say a bit more about the performance in relation to the problem we have with the population ageing and inequalities? Or is that too big an issue?
It's too big an issue for myself. I was expecting to be joined by
Right.
Callum, the performance
That's
manager, and Leslie, in relation to strategic planning.
I'll leave it for now. That's fine.
All right.
With
Can I ask
apologies.
Gail to come in on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe not a specific answer, but this is a big challenge that we have in terms of our population is growing older, which is, people are living for longer, which is positive on one hand, but people are also living with multiple conditions. So their healthy life expectancy is limited. So the amount of time that people live but not in good health is growing and is significant. And that's the time where people need support to live, which obviously has an impact on the partnership and our resources, and in terms of making sure that we put in the right capacity in the right places to support people to live well for as long as they can. We also have a challenge around our ageing population in terms of our the available workforce and the number of people who are of working age in the Falkirk area isn't increasing at the same rate as our older population. And what we would say is Falkirk is not different to other places in Scotland in that regard, but that presents a challenge. So even if, and we all know that we've also got financial challenges, but even if money wasn't an issue, we've still got a challenge around the number of people who need care and support is increasing while the available workforce isn't increasing at the same rate. So I think that there's some really good examples that are highlighted in the annual performance report, setting out some of the work that we're doing, particularly around the early intervention and prevention work that has been done. I think that in Falkirk Partnership, there's been a lot of really good work working with our third sector partners, in particular around how do we support people to live well at home, to be connected in their community, to receive those, be connected to low-level supports as well. I think the work that we've got planned that Tom mentioned earlier around our review of our strategic plan, and actually what does our strategic plan need to say into the future. I think that piece of work will capture a lot of your question in terms of there is no easy answers to this, but what do we need to do in a more granular basis? What does that look like in terms of that future model of what we provide in the partnership to ensure that we're able to meet some of those really big challenges that you've highlighted? So I know it's not a definitive answer, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that is helpful. I'm glad you made reference to early intervention, because in a sense that is the key, moving more towards prevention instead of treating people when they're in acute need. So yes, thank you. I look forward to more information on it in the future.
If I may, Chair, you raise a very, very valid point there towards the end. In terms of some of our early indications around about the new strategic plan, and of course we often talk about our future operating model, what are the key principles around about that? But one of them is to redress the balance of our footprint in relation to that which we deliver directly or that which we commission directly, and into a much broader, well-supported, better resourced infrastructure around about community capacity and the capacity of individuals and the third and independent sector. So it is a key plank in going forward that we try to introduce and embed and sustain much more localized natural supports for people, rather than often what they might feel as the need to come into service land and get as the minimal chunk of that is available to us to be able to give to them and to be able to have the capacity to give to them. So it is much more about finding very different ways. You can only really achieve that, however, if you have a really engaged, collaborative relationship with citizenship around about what is the art of possible, and what might be the safeguards that we put in place, and what might be the alternative ways of delivering support for people in the most natural way. That is an important point.
Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is a very important point about moving towards keeping people well rather than treating them well. That should be. David, can I bring you in next?
Yeah, thank you. just picking up on Councillor Hannah's point, I mean, much of prevention is out with the scope of healthcare, and people living healthy lives is out with healthcare. But I'm sure she'll be pleased to know that the Scottish Government have introduced an enhanced service for GPs this year on cardiovascular disease prevention. It's starting off small, so in my practice of 8,500, we'll just be targeting 109 people aged between 35 and I think it's 70, and we'll be looking to look at their cardiovascular risk factors and address these at a very early stage in the hope that will prevent future diabetes, heart attacks, strokes, etc. So I think that is very much the kind of prevention programme that we need to be getting into in Scotland to control our healthcare costs, and I think that's a real positive move. This report, I always love data tables, and these data tables I think are interesting. So Callum's, thankfully produced these. Just a few of the things that jumped out at me. Our attendances at A&E haven't really substantially changed over the last 9 or 10 years, which I think is in one way reassuring, and does ask some other questions. Our bed days spent by people who are ready for discharge is higher than the Scottish average, so the piece of work that we just heard about, shifting the balance of care, is really important for that, and that kind of highlights the need for it. The other thing that always draws my attention is our 28-day readmission to hospital rate. The last time we had this data, I raised that and was told that actually the way we calculate it was different, and that was all rectified and there wasn't a problem. But I think there is a problem. I think too many people are readmitted to hospital within 28 days. I think it does raise some important questions. How we communicate from secondary care to primary care, I think, is an issue, and I'm pleased Andrew Murray has said he would take that to the NHS board and ask that we start a communication strategy led by the board on the way we communicate with primary care. At the moment, I receive probably over 100 different formats of communication from NHS Forth Valley, and I think that leads to mistakes and leads to missed communication. How we discharge people from hospital, I think it has to be timely. It has to take account of the patient's needs. They have to have the right care package. They have to have medication going out of hospital with them so that they can actually manage the first few days with medication. The patient has to be well informed of what they might expect when they come out of hospital, and they need to be someone needs to talk to them about the likely challenges they might face in the first few days out of hospital and how they should address these, and how they should plan for these. During admission, people need to have polypharmacy reviews. They need to have capacity assessments done. They need to have respect and do not resuscitate forms considered. And they need to have appropriate, when people leave hospital, they need to have appropriate follow-up plans in place. And all the investigations they've had done in hospital need to be acted on, and the patient needs to be informed of the result of them. With all these things, and with a really strong hospital at home service and primary care service, I think we could keep people out of hospital. But at the moment, we're a third above the Scottish average in Forth Valley. So I always think comparing us with the rest of Scotland is worthwhile. I think there is a problem. The last time I was told there wasn't a problem, and it was the way we calculated the data, and that was changed. But we're still sitting a third above the Scottish average. So I hope that as an IJB we can push our health board to find the right solutions to that. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Yep, there are some important points there that we can take back. Callum, did you want to come in on this point?
Yeah, just to come in on David's point about the data there, I think David makes a lot of excellent and very valid points there. The issue, just for me to clarify that about the readmissions data, there was a change in the way that readmissions data was recorded, and I think it was around acute assessment used to be recorded or didn't used to count as an admission, and then that changed in 2019. And that's seen a spike in our readmissions, but so I think that hasn't changed. So that is the current methodology. But I think the important context, and I think it agrees with what David's saying, is that even before that change in recording, we were above the national average for readmissions, and then that change then pushed us further above the national average. So just to add that context.
Okay, that's useful, Callum. Thank you. So yeah, there is an issue there, but it sounds like there is some discussion going on in the background that will hopefully Again, we come back to the issue of communications between different parts of the system and getting things right for each person each time. So we'll take that work forward. Councillor Collins.
Thank you. I think the report's excellent. And I really like that. And obviously there's lots of data tables as well, but just really like the way it's presented and really, I think talking about people at the heart of it. I think that's how you make performance interesting. I think that's make data interesting. But I think I wanted to just ask a little bit about the I suppose maybe how we're considering what additional work we're considering in relation to growing our own workforce. And I know there's been a lot that's going on, and see some of the work at that around that sponsoring education. But obviously the growing older population, but with the falling workforce, and obviously we have an aging workforce as well. And I suppose maybe just to talk a bit about what we've been doing and what we're planning.
Okay, Tom.
Another small one, so thank you very much. At our most recent national return on workforce, that was a key feature that we identified with the government, and we understand that is also something in accordance with the other returns that received as well. In terms of we seem to have drifted over the years away from recognising that internally the potential answer to some of these challenges is there. At the moment, in terms of initiatives, I'm not close enough to the specific initiatives that we have in place, although I'm trying to get close to those specific initiatives. But we do absolutely recognise that that has to be a key feature of going forward in order to address some of the incoming demographic challenges that we have in relation to the age ranges of our available workforce and the ageing population that requires to be served. So we do obviously recognise that as both a key challenge and a potential solution to some of that. And I can certainly come back at a later stage with the detail of the activity my colleagues are involved in. That's helpful.
Okay, Gail.
I was just wondering if Martin might want to comment on the specifics we're doing around recruitment and retention for social workers as well. So I think that's probably quite a good sort of tangible example.
We've actually been fairly successful in our recent attempts around recruitment, specifically for social workers. I believe recently we were able to interview more social work applicants than we had posts available for the first time in many years. I think a lot of that is to do with that new offer that we agreed probably just over a year ago around the enhancement to the practitioner grade, where we created and established the advanced practitioner roles. And we've actually finally begun to see the fruits of that coming true. We've also increased the number of MHOs recently as well. And there is some work ongoing to expand that team further. So our actions seem to finally be working. So that's really positive news. We are still struggling in a number of other areas, but the recruitment retention work continues to look at options around those roles. More specifically in relation to occupational therapy, I have to say that one of the local universities is beginning to look at training courses, and we plan to link in with that as well. So hopefully we'll be able to offer not just training social workers placements, but training occupational therapists as well, which will hopefully give us better access, I guess, to staff in that workforce as well.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Tom, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I return to a comment that Councillor Colley made a minute or two about liking the reading of the report? There has been a deliberate attempt this year to start the evolution of a change in style in the report. As members can imagine, an annual performance report is often on one number of pages, the aggregation of lots of quite disparate sets of information, lots of useful tables that you really need, lots of different inputs, but it can often unfortunately read like that, that it's kind of hard to see lots of correlation between them all. And going forward, and it's our kind of strategic intent in any case, to put people at the centre of the report as much as possible, the individuals and the experience that people have of services, and to try to weave within there a kind of person-centred narrative around about how we are performing in terms of telling the story of how well we are doing as an aggregation or a collation of different elements of data. There will always be, so we're not cutting out the important data tables that sit behind it, but we are trying now to assure the board that what they're seeing is also person-centric as opposed to a number of countables and what direction those countables are in. They'll always be there, just to reassure you, but it's also trying to tell the story that you can be assured of progress that we're making. So this is the first time we've kind of gone slightly towards that, and I mean genuinely slightly towards that. But hopefully, if that's okay with members, that's the direction we would wish to go in future iterations.
Absolutely, thank you. No, it's important we have the data that we have to produce, but yes, it's important we have that narrative too, because it is all about people at the end of the systems. Okay, thank you, colleagues. So we're being asked to consider and comment on the draft, which I think we've done, and delegate authority to the Chief Officer in consultation with Chair and Vice Chair to approve the final report for publication. Are we happy to approve those recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Next item then is the Alcohol and Drug Partnership Annual Report. Phil Heaton is with us for this one. Phil.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, colleagues. Thanks for inviting me to present the ADP Annual Report today. So I think before I start, Scottish Government could do with some of Tom's help in sorting these reports out, because this is as dry as it comes. This is it's a routine report. It takes the form of a survey of cross-cutting themes designed to collect information from all ADPs across Scotland on a range of aspects relating to the delivery of various work streams, the national mission, alcohol-related work, and it's all during the financial year of 24-25. There is an appreciation from Scottish Government that this survey will not be exhaustive. It will likely omit work which is individuals to specific ADPs. The way ADPs are set up in Scotland, very few look and operate in the same way. So this is an attempt by Scottish Government to really try and get some of the detail of the cross-cutting themes only. An example of some of the work that isn't included is the extensive work over the last few months by Falkirk ADP to carry out a full strategic needs assessment in preparation for the development of a new strategy and commissioning plan to support the implementation of an improved model of care. And that has really been the main driver of the work that the ADP team in Falkirk has been dealing with. Some of the cross-cutting themes that are highlighted, they are all there for people to see, but they do include things like lived and living experience inclusion, workforce development, stigma reduction, access to treatment, children, families and communities affected by substance use. So those are some of the types of cross-cutting themes that are highlighted within the report. The goal is that that's the survey, the data collected, within the survey will hopefully be used to better understand progress nationally, and it will inform various different documents such as the national monitoring of the national mission to reduce drug deaths, the ongoing evaluation of the national mission. The national mission of it should be said is due to come to an end in March next year. That's been a 5-year mission and a 5-year priority of the Scottish Government that's filtered down to local ADPs as well. So we're in a process now where we're trying to evaluate that and see what the best practice was and what we can learn from that to take forward post National Drugs Mission. It's a really simple ask of the IJB. This has already been to the ADP executive for approval, and all we're asking the IJB to do is to approve the sign-off finally, so that it can be officially given to Scottish Government. Happy to answer any questions that anybody may have, but I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Are there any questions? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Convener. Thank you for this report, and thank you for all the good work that's being done. I wonder if you could say a wee bit just about where I'm always interested in league tables, where we stand in relation to other areas in Scotland, I think is quite an important factor.
Councillor, there's so many different metrics when it comes to this. There's not one defining one. I guess the most recent one and the most kind of publicly available one, Public Health Scotland just recently released the National Benchmarking Report. It's an annual report for the implementation of the MAT standards. And just as a side, by the way, the foreword of that report was written by our own Peter Cochrane, the development officer for the ADP. So that's a bit of kudos for Falkirk ADP, writing the foreword to a national document there. I recommend you read it if you get a chance. We kind of figure roughly in the middle to the top end where we should be. I don't think anybody would get any surprises if they read where we are. We are all green for all of the standards. So there's nothing in there that would be worrying in any way. But there are other metrics as well that we probably need to take into account, things like drug-related deaths, alcohol-related deaths, and the ADP support team at the moment is working hard to try and bring drug-related deaths and that work stream into more centrally into the ADP. Currently, it sits within our NHS public health team. The strategic lead for drug deaths and suicides sits within that team, and it really should be a function of the ADP. So what we're trying to do at the moment is look at ways in which we can bring it more into the control of the ADP so that we can make it more of a clear strategic objective going forward. So yeah, I'm happy to talk off table, Councillor. I'm struggling just now off the top of my head to think of any more metrics that may be useful or important. But I would rate us as not great, not terrible, somewhere in the middle.
Thank you for that. You make reference to drug-related deaths. Can I just ask a bit more, ask you to say a little more about the preventative work, because that is fundamentally the most important part of it, is the preventative work, both on drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, so early intervention and prevention is a key aspect of the work that we want to do taking forward. It's I was chatting to our local MP, Ewan Steinbank, last week about this very thing, and it feels like at the moment, because all this work, all this national mission, all this £250 million that's been pumped into ADPs by government nationally, and the drug deaths are still on the increase. They're not coming down. The alcohol deaths are still on the increase. Sorry, hang on a sec. And what that tells me is that we're focusing on maybe the wrong thing here. It would be the problem is that if you're looking to try and make any meaningful reduction in the harms that things like drugs and alcohol cause, you are looking at a generational response, and that often goes against a political term of 4 years, 5 years. It doesn't bring results immediately. What we need to do is concentrate on community work, community-based work. We need to concentrate on community development. We need to liaise with local industries to try and get apprenticeships directed at areas of high deprivation. If you live in an area of high deprivation, you are 15 times more likely to die from a drug-related death than if you lived in an area of low deprivation. So we need to focus all our efforts on these areas. We need to look at where the drug deaths are happening and where the near-fatal overdoses are happening, and we need to site our services within those areas so that access to those services is not a barrier for people. This is all something that we're going to be taking forward over the next wee while. All our contracts at the moment for our commission services expire at the end of the National Drugs Mission, and it's no coincidence that we've just had the needs assessment done, because we're looking to enter into a period of strategic development. With that will come a commissioning plan and a new model of care being described, and we would hope to address all such things as prevention and early intervention. How do we include children and young people and families within these discussions as well? How do we move the narrative away from heroin and alcohol? Because in the 25 years I've worked in this business, one thing that's come very clear to me is it's got nothing to do with drugs. This is about communities, this is about connections, and this is about opportunity and aspiration. So if we can concentrate on those aspects of things, people's people's need to use substances naturally diminishes. It was once said to me that drug use is a normal response to an abnormal living situation, and I firmly believe that, and I think early intervention and prevention has got a real key element to play in that.
Thank you very much. That was very eloquently put. Thank you, convener.
Yeah, we are getting into the big issues today, aren't we? Councillor Collins.
Yeah, more not really a question, but more a comment just around on page 245 around the anti-stigma work. And I was fortunate enough to be at a presentation, I believe it was the University of Strathclyde, and was talking about they'd done some research into do not attend, so they've been doing the services and support that they needed, and quite often why there was significant barriers to them engaging with the support that may well be there, but they were unable to access it, and they talked about it as missingness, and it's actually, that word has actually made it into the population health framework thing that was published yesterday by the Scottish Government. But I think that one of the key elements was stigma, and the stigma that people felt through having issues with either drugs or alcohol. So I think it's brilliant to see that, brilliant to see it in relation to services, also in relation to the public as well. And I think, you know, talking about these things also starts to make communities think differently as well, about how they support someone who's having perhaps having some as well. So I just wanted to welcome that.
Yep, great comment. Thank you. Okay, recommendation then, as Phil said, is that we approve the annual reporting survey submission to the Scottish Government. Are we happy to do that? Okay, thank you for the report, Phil, and thank you for the work that you and your teams do.
Thank you, colleagues.
Can we move on then to item 14, which is the Strategic Risk Register? Marie.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper provides an update on the IJB Strategic Risk Register. No new risks have been added to the register since last reporting. There are currently 9 live risks recorded in the register. 1 is considered very high risk, which is finance, 7 are high risk and 1 medium risk. A review of the Strategic Risk Register has been carried out and an action plan was presented to the Audit Committee in November and is now progressing we are now progressing with the recommended actions. Pending those updates and proposed changes, each current risk will continue to be reviewed regularly. There have been no changes to the individual risk ratings, and a number of key considerations are set out from 4.7 onwards. I'll just highlight a few of note. In relation to financial sustainability, this has been updated in relation to the agreement of the medium-term financial plan in March, and the budget and the implementation of the Budget Oversight Group has now been added as a future control, which is due to begin in July. Implementation of the new integration scheme will be moved to a current control once it's signed off by Scottish Government, and the Children and Families Justice Service budgets will be aligned with the IJB following that agreement. And in relation to governance arrangements, an update has been provided in relation to all of the changes to the IJB governance and the management governance. Capacity and infrastructure has also been updated in relation to the finalisation of the draft integration scheme. In relation to commissioning, current controls have been added to reflect the appointment of the commissioning lead in April 2025, and also a note around the care at home redesign work, which will resume once the care at home lead is appointed to the leadership structure, and they're due to start in July. Around resilience and business continuity, updates are now added in relation to the hosting of the third and final Care for People framework, and also in relation to the resilience workshops that have been held with extended senior management team to test current plans and the HSCP's response to a major incident. We're also developing a communication strategy around major incidents, and that's been updated and developed in tandem with the session that we had in May and the results. The IJB risk strategy is due to be reviewed during 25-26, and I'm happy to take any questions on the specifics or on the detailed appendix. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Marie. So lots of detail there, but fundamentally no changes to the overall risk profile or scoring.
Yes.
Are there any points or questions? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. and thank you very much for this piece of work, Marie. It's obviously a matter of some concern that on all bar one of the areas, the risk is currently high or very high. So obviously we'll be keen to hear of the improvement actions that are going to be taken to make that change. I wonder if you could say a little more about the areas where the risk is high and the target risk is also high, which suggests that we are actually meeting our targets, which slightly troubles me that our target is to have certain things with a high risk.
Come back on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there are quite a number that are high. Councillor Hannah, thanks for that, your comments. Part of the action plan is that we're going to do a full review, but a focused reviews of a number of those strategic risks. What we looked at as part of that review was, are we recording the right strategic risks? Are we recording those targets at the right level? And who are the risk owners and how do we record them? So there's quite a number of facets to the reviews that are ongoing. That action plan is just starting to take shape. We've actually started those focused reviews and planning for the focused reviews that are coming. And part of that will be to look at what are those target risks and what should they be and are they appropriate. So there are a number of things that we're going to look at, including who's leading, who's the lead on those risks. Because of the change in the management structure, we need to look at who should be owning those risks and who are the appropriate people to be reviewing them regularly and who are the right people to be around the table around that. We're also looking at adding the risk register onto Pentana. So there's an element of, I think there's a bit of update fatigue as well sometimes, that the strategic risk register is quite a weighty document as well. So we're looking to simplify the document, add it onto Pentana so that we're getting those automatic updates requested as well. That'll take a bit of time, but we're working with Hugh Coyle and Vicky on the NHS side around that, and they're helping us with those focused reviews. So yeah, where those risks are high and the targets are high, that's part of what we're going to be looking at as we move forward with these reviews. Now, some of them, that will be appropriate. So for example, finance is obviously rated at very high risk. Yes, our target should be would be a bit lower than that. But for me, the finance one is absolutely rated correctly at this point in time, in view of the financial position of all IJBs and the Scottish position, the national position. I think that's absolutely the right rating for it to have. But as I say, as we move through these reviews, that will be part of what we're looking at, and we can certainly bring back an update around that. Thanks.
Thank you. I look forward to the update. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, can we note the risk register then? Okay, thank you. So item 15 is primary care GP sustainability, which we've mentioned a couple of times today. Tommy, you can lead us up.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm joined today by Louise McCallum, who's our primary care lead. I think it would be fair to say that at IGBs we hear a lot about a lot of services, and to a greater or lesser extent we feel close to or involved with all of those services. But I think it would probably be very hard to find anybody in our society that doesn't have either some involvement and experience of or understanding of what general practice is. It's the place you go to see your doctor and a various other assorted services. The NHS, we always say, is one of the bedrocks of our civic society and one of the things that identifies the UK in terms of a distinction, but probably more accurate to say actually general practice, where 90% of all health-related activity starts and to a large extent remains, it is probably the thing we're mostly thinking of when we say that. Now, in Scotland, the Primary Care Medical Services Act of 2004 requires NHS boards to ensure access to all citizens within its health board area to general practice. The model that has over a long period of time evolved and sustained and seems to be the preferred model in Scotland is to have very localised, accessible, relatable general practices within an independent practice model. Now, we do, of course, have what we would describe as 2C practices. In the Forth Valley area, the whole Forth Valley area, we only have one of those. That's, I guess, a directly managed service. So other than that, the other 47 practices are all independent businesses, practitioners. That's a thing not always well understood by the general public. And I guess that's one of the key features that we're trying to describe here, is that whilst everybody can relate to in some way or have experience of general practice and the doctor's surgery, etc., it's actually a very complex thing, both individually and across the whole system. And it is not well understood. And it would be fair to say that one of the things that might surprise an awful lot of people is how challenging it is to make it sustainable. And some of the headlines of those is the fact that they are independent practices, often quite small businesses. In a previous life, not so very long ago, I was involved with general practice and reviewing some things down in England. And there, the super practice is a fairly common thing. Gigantic organisations, often quite remote from populations, very efficient in many respects, but nevertheless quite difficult to relate to for citizens. It is not the model that is preferred in Scotland. But the fact of the matter is that having the model we have in Scotland makes it very challenging for these independent businesses everywhere, both urban and rural, and sometimes very rural, to retain sustainability. There are challenges in terms of recruitment and retention. There are significant challenges around about premises and infrastructure, management limitations, costs, etc. The mitigation over the last few years, around about 2019, was the evolution of the Primary Care Improvement Plan. And whilst there have been significant successes in there, and in particular, there are 200 more people involved in associated with general practice in the Forth Valley area. In reality, if you think about that, that's not an awful lot of people across 48 practices. But the attempt there was, of course, is to ensure that there was an integration of different multi-professional roles in order to free up as much time as possible for our general practice doctors to concentrate on the complex care that many individuals need in an increasingly frail and aging population with more aging with complex conditions role. It has had some success. There's no doubt about that. There is the additional capacity, but it remains a challenge in relation to the levels of funding being dedicated to it. And its ability to fully integrate into the demand that is being made of it. And that is also, of course, the story of the other aspects of general practice in the area. Over and above the GMS contract, which is, of course, the direct contract arrangement that is in place to support general practice in order to deliver to all of the registered practitioners. There is enhanced services arrangements in place, which is activity that general practices agree to do over and above that which they are contractually obligated to do. There's a significant problem around those. Those are often very well regarded by the local population, and they feel very local rather than being delivered from somewhere else. But of course, the levels of support and funding that goes into them has been something of a challenge. This has made the environment for encouraging GPs to work in practices, etc., something of an additional challenge in terms of the what might be seen as the over time, and there is a lot of evidence to support this, a reduction in real terms in terms of the funding. So sorry, I realise I've now rambled on now for about 5 or 10 minutes, and you want to ask questions. This paper has been doing the rounds, so some of you might feel that it's quite familiar. It has been to the Staff Governance Committee, it's been to the NHS Forth Valley Board, and on Wednesday there it was at the Clacks and Stirling IJB. It was also against some of the source material for the joint Clacks, Stirling and Falkirk IJB development session not so long ago. So a lot of the detail in there for those who have been around a while and appreciating not all members have been, might feel quite familiar. So with that, I will stop, open it up for questions, and Louise will be able to answer the hard ones.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Do we have questions? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. Just a quick question first, which I would like clarified. The report says the Forth Valley population is around 305,570, but there are 330,328 registered GP patients. Where are we importing them from?
This is actually for the most part, the answer to that is something that's experienced all over the country. Stirling University will have lots of students, and there are colleges as well, will have lots of students who are registered in 2 places. So the overlap of that. What you also get, and I don't know, and perhaps David or Louise would be able to give you the detail of that, the extent to which it is often more suitable for individuals or convenient for individuals to register with a practice over the borders. I remember when I was in Aberdeen, the Aberdeenshire thing created, and Gail will recall this as well, an awful lot of overlap between registrations in one place from citizens in another. So there are a couple of factors there. It's promise you, it's not just that we can't count. But I don't know if David or Louise want to give.
Louise, can I bring you in?
Yes, just quickly, we do have a number of practices that do operate cross-border, a couple of those in the Bowness area, and also Clacks and Kincardine in particular, as well as some of rural Stirling. So that would account for some of that difference.
Thank you. It's just that it does kind of jump out at you. Now you mentioned that 90% of health-related activity starts with the GP practices, and most of it remains there, or a substantial proportion. But I was just double checking there, and 6.5% of the NHS budget goes to primary care. If we are going to begin to focus more on early intervention and prevention, what can we do about dealing with that challenge?
I am more than happy to give an answer, but I actually wonder maybe David or Louise would want to kind of come in on that.
So, Councillor Hannah, you're absolutely right, 6.5%, and in fact this year we think it will be less than 6%. Largely, I would say to you that I think that's a national problem, and nationally there are discussions going on between the BMA and the Scottish Government around readdressing that, and we're looking for commitment from Scottish Government to readdress that over a period of years, to actually commit to readdressing that. That's been a problem. We used to account for 11% of the budget 20 years ago, and it's gone down to 6.5%, and that is largely why some of the services that we're able to offer in the community has eroded over the last 20 years, added to the ageing population, all the other issues that we talked about. What we can do locally is really around what Tom mentioned about that enhanced services area. Enhanced services are things that we can choose to invest in. So Scottish Government provides a minimum amount that health boards must offer out to practices in enhanced services, but we can choose to add more money to that. We can choose to invest further in enhanced services to meet the needs of our population in the community rather than in hospitals. And I think that's something that we should be, and I think we are starting to look at locally. Thanks.
If I may also add to that, some of the initiatives we've heard today again start to expose that opportunity around about an acknowledgement that an awful lot more activity year on year is being done within our communities to support people to live at home with complex care. So along with all of the reason why we're doing it is also about gathering that evidence about trying to localise. But also we are having a workshop quite soon in which we hope to be able to identify a number of potentially short, medium, long-term opportunities to redress the footprint of activity that goes on in secondary care to more localised services involving general practice. I think that is very good for the population. I also think that it would contribute significantly to the sustainability of general practice. So I think it's something we would want to be really looking at seriously and encouraging as another initiative that could very much support.
That's great. Thank you for that. Thank you both. The next question I have is about the recruitment and retention problem, because that is clearly fundamental to the sustainability of our GP practices. I wonder if you could say a little more about challenges and about what we can actually do about it.
Again, I think you'll get the best answer. Again, I can give you definitely an answer, but the best answer perhaps from Louise again and David, who are closer to the experience of such recruitment retention challenges.
Okay, Louise, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Councillor Hannah. It is a very complex issue. We've certainly done a lot of work to try to identify particular areas. We've improved the local intelligence that we have around those workforce challenges. We've worked closely with LMC colleagues on exit interviews, for example, to really understand why people may leave the profession early as well. And I think David will come on to say a bit more about that side of things. But absolutely, it is an issue, and we understand that the income that goes through general practice is directly linked to the staffing decisions that they can make, and obviously by being able to do something around that increases practices' opportunity to look at their own staffing and expand on that. But it's certainly a problem that we've done a lot to try to understand a bit more. We've put in place things like a GP coaching and mentoring service for those in their first 5 years of training, so that we can better support those coming into the profession as well. But I'll come to David now. He perhaps wants to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. There are plenty of GPs out there. You'll see in the news about GP underemployment and GP unemployment. We trained more GPs last year than we've ever trained before. So there are plenty of GPs out there to recruit. We are very good at training in Forth Valley. Scotland is #1 out of the 17 areas in Britain for training GPs, ranked by the trainees, and Forth Valley is very high within Scotland for trainee experience. So we train GPs really well, but we have to put them into a role that is sustainable and manageable. Now, I often moan about the interface between primary and secondary care, and the reason I do is because if we locally can find the solutions to that interface, we'll improve the lives of the GPs working here, and we'll be able to retain the GPs. I think that's a really key thing that we can do locally. Always thinking, there are national things that need to happen, but locally, that interface between primary and secondary care, the pathways with which we work in. So when we recognise someone having something that we need to refer them to secondary care, we need to have very clear guidelines and pathways to help make that process as simple and straightforward as possible, getting that patient to the right place. So really, I think these are the interface is really the thing that we can make the most impact in terms of retaining our GPs, and I think that's where we can work. But long-term recurrent funding is required to be able to recruit GPs. So one-off payments are great, and they cover the cost of GPs doing additional hours ad hoc. But in order to have long-term GPs in post delivering care, we need long-term commitment to recurrent funding. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. And just one final question I wanted to raise is, and you make reference to the fact that most practices are independent businesses, and I think that's one of the things that the public is often unaware of. GPs are not employed by the NHS. They are independent, self-employed. I wonder if you could say a little about the GP contract and how that impacts, or perhaps you might want to pass that on, how that might impact on the issues that we're addressing here in terms of sustainability.
Thank you very much for that question. That's a hard question. And I'm certainly not an expert on the GMS contract, so I'll pass it over to my colleagues. The GMS cut, for those who don't know, came in was a new one that came in 2018, if I recall correctly. And of course has had that period of time to embed in. I understand that there are discussions around about the renewal of a contract or the revision of the contract. But I don't know if Louise or David would want to kind of pick upon that.
Yeah. I mean, the GMS contract, this, as Tom said, it changed in 2018, but before that was the previous GMS contract. So I've worked under 2 GMS contracts in my time. What it is a very cost-effective way of delivering care. It's much cheaper than the other way of delivering it, which is directly managed by the board. It does create challenges. I'm the clinical lead for Falkirk, and I have to use encouragement and cajoling with practices. I can't tell people what to do other than their contractual regulations. So, it does create some challenges for health boards and IJBs in order to direct what is done. But at the same time, it has proven a very, very effective, very cost effective, and it empowers the GPs to have control over their work, and that's generally been seen as an excellent way of recruiting. So it's much harder to recruit to practices under a 2C health board delivered situation, and that's proven across Scotland. There's numerous 2C practices across Scotland, and they struggle to recruit, whereas partners, because of that independence and because they feel able to say what they need to be able to say, and because they get to control their own business, it's been really good for recruitment. Thanks.
If I may, Chair, there was a recent variety of discussions around about the PSIP, which of course is an employed workforce introduced into general practices to support the practices themselves. And it has been something of a challenge for the practices to observe how difficult and challenging it is to sustain a steady flow of recruitment and availability of people. That is not in any way a criticise of NHS Forth Valley any more than it would be of the council, because we have our ways of recruiting and the processes that have to be followed. And so the practices themselves can move much slicker when they themselves determine the available funds and a need to recruit. And I think you see sometimes where those two worlds collide, it can be perceived as quite challenging. But it's not because anyone is not doing their best, it's just to do with how the different things work. But it's one of those areas where you do see a kind of a slight tension, and the model that's in place that has traditionally allowed practices to move quite quickly to redress a challenge they have.
Thank you, convener.
Okay, Louise, was there something else in that point that you wanted to raise?
Just a little bit around that PCIP workforce, just to note that that there are workforce pressures within that set of teams as well, and that can also add to the challenge of maintaining a stable workforce there. We've done a lot of good work with the support of our practices to create training pipelines and skill mix within those to make as big an impact as we possibly can. But there are those broader national challenges around availability of pharmacists, for example.
Okay, thanks, Louise. Stephen, thanks for waiting. Can I bring you in now?
Thanks, Gordon. Yeah, I think it's about the fourth time I've heard this presentation. It's interesting. It goes off in different discussions. I suppose referring back to, I think, David's point earlier about one of his issues isn't a shortage of staff or GPs. It's actually capacity to deliver appointments. And bearing in mind they are independent contractors, and the health board owns buildings, council, the rest of it. I think in a practical way, is there anything that we can do as an IJB to improve physical capacity in local practices, whether that's, I don't know, in from hiring porta cabins or using other buildings for GP appointments or digital delivery, just to maximise what we've got already in place. Is there any thought or plan of how we could potentially do that? Thank you.
Yep, that's a really good point, Tom.
Louise, if Louise could maybe pick that up.
Okay, Louise, you've been delegated to answer that one.
Yes, not a problem, and it is an issue, and we would certainly welcome any suggestions and support with regard to that. Falkirk is a particular area. Many of our practices are, I would describe, as landlocked, so limited in terms of the space around them to be able to expand. We know that there's pressures on capital spend and increasing. The footprint is very difficult. These are expensive projects, and we're waiting for that to be opened up again from Scottish Government. But yes, we would always want to look creatively. We have areas where we know that there will be population growth as well, and we're proactively looking at solutions to expand space and create a bit more capacity in those areas. But it is a difficult pressure where there are basically insufficient consulting rooms in some buildings and very little space to go. We have considered porta cabins in the past, so yes, it's not something that's gone away. It's more difficult to do than you think, but a really good a good opportunity there, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. We've had a good discussion there and covered quite a wide range of issues. I do want to move us on. The recommendations are very much about noting the update and discussing, which I think we've done to good effect. So.
Sorry, Chair, if I can just come back briefly, I suppose for the benefit of 2 days ago, I was at the Clacks and Stirling IGB, and as you can imagine, there was a big conversation about this very thing, and they felt perhaps slightly behind the loop compared to perhaps Falkirk, because of course most of us are here regularly and this conversation takes place regularly. They had asked if it would be possible to consider another joint development session. I suppose that's down for the chief officers to determine that, but they would be keen to collaborate with Falkirk on a deeper dive into some of the themes of primary care sustainability. So I thought I'd just mention that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair suggestion, and one that we'll look at. There is an issue about areas where one IGB is leading on behalf of both and making sure that the other one, whichever way around it is up to date with what's happening. So that's something maybe we need to have a bit of offline discussion about. Point taken. Can we move on then to item 16, which is the NHS Forth Valley Population Health and Care Strategy? It's yourself again, Tom.
That's back to me again, yes. Sorry, I've managed to open the wrong paper. Just yeah. So I suppose most of us growing up, or of the last generation or so, had a kind of sense of that the life expectancy was going up. We were all living healthier lives, etc. But the reality has been over the past number of years now that has begun to change direction. The trajectory is not as positive as it was. So Scottish Government have been spending a lot of time with COSLA in relation to how do we start to not just assume that it will reset itself, acknowledging the impact of the pandemic and everything, and the possibilities that all of that has had a significant adverse effect. How do we make sure that we don't make the same assumptions and not address that? So in June 2024, the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Social Care outlined a vision where people live longer, healthier and more fulfilling lives. NHS Forth Valley has taken that seriously and began to gather views and priorities from communities, a large engagement event, and it's helped to inform what is now in front of you as the NHS Forth Valley Population Health and Care Strategy 2025 to 2035. One of the significant things that NHS Forth Valley want to emphasise in here is firstly, they see themselves as a population health organisation now. So that is a significant step to position yourself as that, as opposed to we deal with whatever comes through the door. And whilst I'm not suggesting for a moment that that's how they tended to see the world, it is important and significant that they really do want to position themselves very specifically and deliberately in that as a population health organisation. The second point I would make is that they do not perceive themselves as being responsible for all of the components that are identified within the strategy. They see themselves as an important player, but this is all about collaboration with all of the key stakeholder organisations, individuals, communities, etc. Outside of that, to as a whole system improve, protect health and well-being, improve the possibilities and the outcomes for people, and deliver high level sustainable health and care. So what we have here in front of us is the draft strategic plan, and it is, as I say, going out to everywhere and everybody. The deadline I think is either passed or just about to pass. I can't tell what the relationship with the dates are right in front of me, but there has been an extension granted for organisations such as ourselves because of the nature of our scheduling, in order for us to give consideration and feedback as an entity into this strategic plan consultation. So effectively, there are 4 key questions being asked here. In terms of how we might respond to those, of course, there will be a conversation here just now and there will be points made. We will attempt to gather those and present that, reflect that back in relation to the IGB, and there'll be, I'm sure the chair would want to agree a process for how that is done and validated. So the 4 questions are: does the draft population health and care strategy for Forth Valley address what is most important to you? If it does not, please tell us why. Secondly, how can you help to deliver the priorities and ambitions set out in the strategy and give us suggestions? Is there anything else you would like to help improve the health and well-being of local people? And is there anything else you would like to tell us before we finalise our health and care strategy? So happy to open that up in whatever way the chair would like.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, the important point is the one you make, that what keeps us well isn't just health services. The usual estimate is that it's only 20% of the picture. The rest of our lives basically are the other 80% picture. And the other thing is the hope that this is a health and social care strategy for the system rather than just the health board. So it is about what we can do as a whole system to be better. And many of the things we've talked about today will feed into that. So there are a whole number of things that the IGB is doing and is planning to do that will effectively form part of the strategy. We can feed into the sort of, what can we do to help deliver this? I think there's a lot in place that we can be feeding in, and that already has in fact been feeded in. Sorry, losing the ability to speak. The other thing that was looked at, I was part of the group that kind of advised on pulling this together. We've looked at past consultations. So the idea of consultation fatigue has been mentioned a few times, and people get a bit fed up with organisations coming back every so often and saying, "And what is it you want again?" And they're saying, "Well, actually, we've told you what our priorities are." We've looked back at things like IGB strategic plans that are based on very good consultation, so that we start from a position of what we already know people want and build on that. So that there has been quite a bit of work on this. Beyond that, happy to open it up for comments or questions from members. Councillor Hannah.
I think that this is you always say that trying to write a report by committee is not a good idea. And likewise, trying to respond to something like this as a committee is quite difficult. That said, I think somebody could go back over all the discussions we've had here today and probably answer every one of those questions, because the comments, questions and the reports highlight a number of the issues. My comment would be, as always, early intervention and prevention, and focusing on that is absolutely fundamental and has to be at the top of the priority list, because we're not our health services are not going to be sustainable if the population ages, health deteriorates, and more people are making more and more demands. The early intervention and prevention is the key issue from my point of view. And linking up with other partners. It's important that it's not just the NHS. It's about sports centres. It's about parks. It's about woods and and about your air quality. It's about so many different things that need to be taken into account, and so it does have to involve a range of different partners. So I think I would be suggesting that we delegate to one of our very, very capable officers the job of going back over everything that's been said today and identifying the answers to these questions.
Yeah, that's great comment. There are so many of the discussions we've had today that fit nicely with this approach, which is no coincidence, but is reassuring that we are kind of moving the same strategy.
I think that seems eminently sensible. I mean, I think that's right. I think it is challenging, of course, in approaching this, as I'm sure many other boards, many other institutions are doing the same thing, which is sort of how can we answer as a whole body a specific question. So I will ask our planning team to look at the recording for today and pick up on the themes, which are absolutely right, undoubtedly there, and respond quite positively to this document. I would be happy to make sure that was done. That suits members, because otherwise we might just endlessly end up repeating the same things when we've already said. So, but are folk happy that the general tone of the document and the general direction of the document is consistent with our own strategic objectives, and that we feel that we can connect with it? Yes, that's one of the fundamental questions.
Seen some nods around the table. Yeah. Councillor Colley, can I bring you in?
Yeah. I well done, Anne, for that suggestion, because I think it's very difficult for everyone to be able to think right now what's the absolute things that should be in there. I think it's so much,
Yeah.
but it's brilliant that the work in terms of going back over consultations that have happened already, because I think we talk about consultation fatigue and people say the same thing every time. Yeah. I've said the same thing for years. So actually, we'll be able to pick up really important things. I think point about early intervention. I think Phil made the point around the significant proportions of poor health are down to poverty, poor housing, and consequences of poverty. And I think that's a bigger question than NHS Forth Valley or Falkirk IJB or whomever. But I think it just kind of gives us that ability to see how we target and support.
Absolutely. So if that work can be done of looking at today's discussions, looking at our kind of known strategic objectives and priorities, I think there's an ability to pull together a good response there, and it would be great if that could be circulated to members once it's done.
That's what I was going to ask, is how would you like it validated before it goes back? Yes. Right, so circulated, and then if there are either comments or reflections, integrate them, recirculate, and then once everybody stopped doing that, we'll take that as a...
Sounds good. We all happy with that?
Just one other thing, when you're looking at early intervention, prevention, there also has to be reference to the balance of funding and moving funding into that area of work. Obviously, the overall funding envelope is relevant as well, but we have to ensure that the balance is being put into the preventative work.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks a lot, Tom. Can we move on then to item 17, which is in the supplementary papers? That's the annual assurance.
Thank you, Chair. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through this report in detail. So this report presents the annual assurance statements for the Audit Committee, the former Audit Committee, the former Clinical and Care Governance Committee, and the new Performance Audit and Assurance Committee. And just to confirm that all three of these were considered by the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee when it met last week. So the IJB has been asked to consider and comment on these annual assurance statements. Thank you.
Okay, so given they have been approved through Performance Audit Assurance Committee, what would be that the work has been done largely there, unless there's anything anyone wants to add? Councillor Hannah?
Just to say yes, I mean, I think the work has been done, and important though this is, I don't think we need to spend a huge amount of time on it here, having already done so.
Yeah. Okay, can we approve those reports then?
Agreed.
Thank you. That takes us to item 19, which is the safe. Sorry, I missed one. I've missed 18. I'm obviously in a hurry to get it. If here, item 18 is the assurance report from the Performance Audit and Assurance.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee met last Friday, and as part of their agenda, they considered if whether or not they felt assured by the information that was provided and discussed on the day, and they confirmed that they did feel assured that the work that we were doing was helping to mitigate any risks and help drive forward the right performance. And they considered what items they would wish to highlight to the IJB today. So there was 3 items that were discussed in detail that they wished to highlight. One was around their discussions around the annual performance report and performance monitoring report, and they specifically were keen to see in the future indicators on the 4-hour access standard and delayed discharges. So we've obviously discussed the annual performance report at IJB already this morning. They also received an internal care home focused assurance report, and that included a deep dive into the assurance received from our inspections by our regulatory bodies. And there was also a video shown which demonstrated the impact of an improvement project around reducing falls in Grahamston Grahamston House Care Home, and that video showed a significant reduction in falls, and it was very positively received by committee members. And I would encourage IJB members to watch the video as well, and we can send that link out. And then during the consideration of the Clinical and Care Governance Management Group report, the committee sought and received assurance on the mandatory training, access, support for provider care home, and the corporate approach around how aggressive incidents have been dealt with. I'm wondering though, just if it might be helpful just to hand over to Councillor Hannah, who's the chair of the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee, if there's any other comments Councillor Hannah would wish to make.
I mean, I said much the same as I said not very long ago, which was, given the nature of our discussions, I think it is useful for officers to kind of highlight. I asked for this to be written for us. We didn't, as a committee, sit down and write this. What I would like is perhaps a bit of feedback from the IJB as to whether the nature of the comments that are coming from the Performance Audit and Assurance Committee, I get it right, are what you're looking for. I mean, I think that the IJB needs to give us some feedback on that. In relation to the video about the Grahamston House Care Home, I think it's worth just saying that was really very well received at the committee, and the statistics were staggering. Basically, by increasing provision of some exercise class, simple chair exercise classes, the number of falls for older people was reduced significantly. And I think so I would definitely encourage everyone to go and look at the video. And if you send it out, send the link out, that would be great. But I would also suggest that there are lessons to be learned across the whole health and social care partnership. And it links also with what we were talking about earlier on in terms of health and well-being and the ageing population. It's because there's an importance of exercise just to keep people as well as possible. And that is going to save our health services a fortune. And by the way, it could just be fun as well.
Again, the value of early intervention and prevention work. Yeah, it's a good comment. I think from my perspective, it's very useful having this report so that we get that level of assurance. I know that minutes come through, but minutes quite often are coming through well after the fact. I think the key thing for me is making sure that where there are items that have come through committee and then come to this IGB, that we kind of think about how we look at what the committee has said at the time the IGB considers the report. And I know that there's a bit of a timing issue this time around because the meeting only happened a few days ago. It's made that more difficult, but we can, when we get kind of into the proper cycle of things, so it would be good, for example, with things like the risk register when it comes through, that there's just a couple of lines there that says the committee looked at this and we're happy, or we're unhappy about areas A and B or whatever, so that we don't simply repeat the same discussion, and also have assurance that that detailed work has been done at committee level, which is the whole point of it. So from my perspective, this is a very useful report. Okay, if we're happy to move on, we do now come to item 19, which is the Safe Staffing Annual Report. Suzanne.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2024-25 Health and Care Safe Staffing Annual Report for social care. The board considered the compliance of HSCP health services at its meeting in March, and so this is the social care element. By way of background, the Health and Care Staffing Scotland Act 2019 places obligations on local authorities and integration authorities when they plan or secure the provision of care services from a care service provider. And these include the principles of the legislation, training for staff, having regard to relevant guidance issued by Scottish ministers, duties of registration requirements of the Care Inspectorate, and duties on prescribed staff methods or tool requirements. So the focus of the first annual report that's in your papers today at Appendix 1 is on externally commissioned Care Inspectorate registered services which were procured or commissioned within the financial year. The report notes there were 6 relevant framework contracts that were commenced during the reporting period, and they're set out at section 4.7. In relation to the annual report, we were asked to respond to 2 questions. The first was in relation to the detailing the steps that we take as an organisation to comply with section 3(2) of the Act. And the draft annual report sets out the approach that has been taken to comply with the requirements, and these include preparation work that was undertaken by the HSCP procurement advisors, our HSCP managers, care inspectorate and providers, and amendments we made to contracts paperwork and contract monitoring arrangements. The second question is to detail any ongoing risks that may affect our ability to comply with the duty. And again, the report sets out some local and national risks. Local risks will be taken forward by myself as the new commissioning lead, and the development of the team for contracting commissioning arrangements with the HSCP. There is a requirement to provide information to Scottish ministers on the steps we've taken, and the annual report will therefore be submitted to Scottish ministers by the 30th of June 2025 deadline. So in conclusion, the board is asked to note the information that we will provide in the first annual report 2024-25 to Scottish ministers, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. The report is to note, but does anyone have any issues they wish to raise? No. So can we note the information that will be sent on to Scottish Government? Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Item 20 is the directions.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll be brief on this one, given the time. So the report is a standard report providing a summary of the IJB directions that have been issued during 24-25, and we're asking the IJB to note the directions update report that's attached to Appendix 1.
Okay, can we note that information?
Noted.
Thank you. And lastly, but very much not least, is the comms and engagement report. Paul, thank you for waiting so long to present.
No worries at all. We made it there in the end. Thank you very much. And hello, members of the board. Nice to see you all. So this is the quarterly update, which provides ongoing monitoring of the implementation of the partnership's communication and engagement strategy and associated joint action plan. So the content of the update covers the period of January to March 2025. During this period, the partnership received at least 9 pieces of media coverage, totaling a reach or opportunities to see of almost 100,000. Coverage was received in the Falkirk Herald, Falkirk Live and Daily Record. And the topic of that coverage was mostly the partnership budget setting process and the public engagement exercise that we undertook in January and February. Also covered service developments within the Mobile Emergency Care Service, which rolled out new defib machines in all of their fleet vehicles, the positive inspection results received at Cunningham House earlier this year, and the expansion of the dementia-friendly initiative across Falkirk with the help of a school logo competition across Falkirk. So the partnership also held or attended 27 engagement events during this period, which includes meetings and drop-in sessions, and that involved and engaged with more than 500 people in this period. Engaging across a range of services, these events and activities, the partnership had 3 surveys open during this time, which covered the budget setting process, the development of the East Locality Plan, and the Forth Valley Macmillan one-to-one service. Colleagues will also know that following a collaborative recruitment process, the IJB appointed new IJB care representatives in January, and further training has been held in early 2025 to increase the pool of care representatives, which help inform decision making at various levels throughout the partnership. And we're pleased to share that we now have 10 care representatives taking part in these opportunities. So lastly, a full list of media coverage of the events held and the consultations that were open during this period is provided at the end of the report, and I'll return us just to the actions for the report, which are consider and comment on the report. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's a really impressive body of work when you see it all together like that. It's always such a good report to read. Are there any questions or comments for Paul?
Just perhaps a reiteration now, and I think there has been a big improvement in terms of the consultation and community engagement, and I would commend staff for that. But always the report card will have to say could do better. And I think it's the really important issue of communicating and consulting with service users and carers and families. That's really very, very important. And they are sometimes the most difficult people to get responses from. And it really is important that work is done to do that. And always looking at the communications that are coming out from the Health and Social Care Partnership and looking at the wording of things and the ways in which we phrase things. I think we've seen some of the media coverage which was less than helpful, let's say, and less than complimentary, and it was sometimes partly a result of the ways in which the Health and Social Care Partnership is communicating when they're contacting service users and families. So I think we really need to focus in on that and get it right. But well done for all the improvements that there have been in terms of the work that's being done.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Paul?
Yeah, and I would just say thank you for that. It's very constructive feedback and definitely feedback that we know needs to be actioned. I would just perhaps note on the sort of accessibility or the inclusiveness of that communication to make it more understandable. We've taken a recent paper to SLT and to the Joint Staff Forum about a new resources and a new training programme for all partnership colleagues about how we can improve our communications and make it in as plain English and as less jargony as possible. And so that's something that we are definitely aware of, and something that we're taking forward soon.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we're happy then to note the report.
Agreed.
Okay, we've reached the end of the agenda. You will be pleased to know. I'm going to get sacked as chair immediately for having 2 lengthy meetings, but we did have a very long agenda today, and we've got through a lot of very important items. So thank you all for staying around to the very bitter end. Thank you for your contributions, and thanks to all the officers who put the papers together and contributed so much to today's discussion. Thanks very much, everyone. See you all soon.
Thank you.